Hello, everyone. My name is Vincent Storr. For this project, I chose the Italian immigration from the years of 1880 to 1980. This is a subject that I can relate to, as my great grandparents on both sides immigrated to the United States from Italy in the early 1900s. So, let's get started. Most Italian immigrants began arriving in the United States massively during the late 1800s. As relatively unskilled laborers, they were needed to fuel the booming industrial economy. Among the reasons why a lot of these Italians came to the United States, specifically in the late 1800s and early 1900s, was due to the increased famine, shortages of land and jobs, raising taxes, rising taxes, where we consider a number considered Americans a land of opportunity. Additionally, overpopulation, poverty, and natural disasters are among other factors that spurred the mass immigration of Italians to the United States. Something else to look at is that the aftermath of the Civil War uh, left a considerable number of individuals killed or others wounded to fill the gap in the labor market. The increasing need of immigration workers who were recruited from Italy, among other regions, in the efforts to fill the shortages of labor that was caused by the war. Mostly, the Italians immigrated to the United States through various ports, whereas the Asians entered primarily through the West Coast centers while other European countries entered the United States through the East Coast facilities. Something that the immigrants could expect when they arrived to Ellis Island. They were subjected to a series of medical exams and questions by immigration inspectors. If they passed the exams, they were given a landing card which allowed them to leave Ellis Island. However, if they failed, they were detained and eventually deported back to their country of origin. Many immigrants who wanted to live in New York City took the ferry to Manhattan, while those who wanted to go to other parts of the United States, took ferries to Manhattan or Hoboken, New Jersey. When immigrants arrived to the United States, they often settled in ethnic enclaves. Now, the ethnic enclave is basically a community of people who share the same language and culture. Most immigrants felt more comfortable around people who shared their language, culture, and living, and the ethnic enclave made it easier to find jobs and housing for those immigrants. In their first year in the United States, immigrants had to adjust to a new country and a new culture. Many immigrants changed their names and learned English in order to assimilate to American society. This was often a difficult process, as you can imagine learning a new language as an adult, as immigrants had to leave their families and friends behind and start anew in a strange and unfamiliar place. Many immigrants also faced discrimination and poverty upon arriving to the United States. Despite the challenges, however, many immigrants were able to find success in the United States. They started new businesses, found good jobs, and made a new life for themselves and their families. As I said, many immigrants changed their names and learned English in order to assimilate into American society. Some immigrants resisted the assimilation and continued to live in ethnic enclaves, while others embraced it. Those who did not try to assimilate into American society often experienced discrimination. They often had difficulty finding jobs and housing, and were often treated poorly by the government and the local populace. Jobs in factories were one of the jobs that did not need any education or skills to do, but they were very dangerous. They paid poorly and were often unsanitary. These jobs were typically filled by people coming new to America who wanted to start earning money right away. Most immigrants had very little to no money. They were willing to work for any amount of pay. Factory owners liked this because they could pay their workers less than typically American workers would get, and they could get it done faster and cheaper. Many immigrants also took on work. This meant they would work from a household, taking care of children, doing chores in the house. They would be paid very little, but sometimes even work for free, as they would have been brought over by their employer, or rather than immigrating on their own. This was housekeeping, cooking, cleaning for the family that they were employed by. The workers often lived with the families that they worked for. They cooked the meals, cleaned all day, looked after the children's. Uh, Immigrants usually kind of were willing to do these kind of jobs because it wasn't a very hard type of work. But for a little money, because it also gave them a place to live, food to eat, and a family to be part of and to help grow. And like I said at the beginning, my great grandparents on both sides of my family immigrated here from Italy. So I'd like to talk about my grandmother's on my dad's side, her father. So, on a more personal note, I'd like to share the story of my great grandfather, Mariano Cristofori. My great grandfather traveled on the SS San Giorgio. They arrived to Ellis Island on October 13th, 1912. He traveled there from Italy to New York with several of his cousins looking for a better life. To give you an idea uh, what it cost back then, it cost a person for second or third class tickets around $50. So I know for a transatlantic ride, $50 doesn't seem like a lot. However, in today's money, that was close to about $1,100. And even still, that's kind of airline flight here. But back then, when there was poverty and money was very scarce, it was very hard to come by that amount of money. And as I stated, like many immigrants, he took the job that he could get. He was a bellman at the Waldorf Astoria for many years, eventually working his way up to a shift manager. He met my grandmother while working there, and in 1915 they got married and had three daughters, my grandmother Diana being the youngest. So I hope you enjoyed my video and learned something from it about what many Italians uh, experience when coming here to the United States. Thank you.